Alright, for today, guys, I thought I would do something I haven't done since 2009, and that's rate and review a music album. Last one I did was AFI Crash Love from 2009. What was that, 12 years ago? I don't even like that fucking album anymore. But I thought I would review an album that, to me, is my number one album nowadays. Now that I've grown and I've matured, and, you know, last time I rated an album, like I said, was 2009, and I've grown a lot since then. I haven't actually reviewed any music that, it has grown with me and I've appreciated being 35. I just turned 35. And this album specifically, I think, has a lot of meaning, at least in my life, personally. And it's a more mature version of what I used to listen to, like way back when I was a teenager, like Slipknot and all those days in the early 2000s. Well, this album pretty much encompasses my old soul of who I am, and it's Amy Winehouse's Back to Black. I planned on getting a tattoo of this album, but I just haven't had the spare money. But anyways, I digress. I digress. The album has been called, to put it in one phrase, that sums up this album perfectly: soul, jazz, and blues with a bottle of booze. I don't care how cheesy that sounds. It really is. It's soul, jazz, and blues with a bottle of booze. It really, when she made this album with Mark Ronson and Salaam Remi back in, the early 2005, I think this was right after Frank, she was going through a lot of shit, for lack of a better term. And she was like off and on with like alcohol, and I don't think she got into the heavy drugs until after this album was made. But she was going through a breakup with, I believe his name was Blake Fielder Sybil. I think that was his name. And that's really when Salaam Remi pretty much took her aside in Miami, Florida, and he, got her away from everything. He was like the father figure in her production crew, I guess, for lack of a better term, because anyways, yeah, he took her away and he like helped her record this album, and it won 5 Grammys? 5 Grammys in 2007, and I think it stayed on the Billboard charts for 4 weeks, Rehab. But anyways, this album pretty much, it brings you back to the 1960s. It brings you back to like Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was one of her inspirations. Donny Hathaway, Sarah Vaughan, what were they called? The Shirelles, I think it was. The 60s group. Girl groups of the 1960s. This is what this album pretty much encompassed, because Amy Winehouse was really into the girl groups of the 1960s. And when she worked and decided to make this album, she wanted to put that into it. So that's how we got Rehab and things like that. And it was actually never intended for Rehab to it wasn't like pre-planned or anything. Rehab was basically something that she talked about with Mark Ronson. She was like, yeah, my old record label, they wanted me to go to Rehab. And I was like, no. And he was like, you should turn that into a song. She was like, really? And he was like, yeah. I mean, it's got a good sound to it. And that's how Rehab became a thing. So she went and she worked on that with, I think Mark Ronson helped her with Rehab and Back to Black. And Salaam Remi helped her. He's worked with Nas. He helped her with a few of the other songs. So I think it was like 5 songs that Salaam Remi did, and I think it was 6 songs that Mark Ronson did. And that's how we got Back to Black. And Back to Black, the title track of the album, was based on her breakup with Blake. And, it felt like, she lost everything. And just to add my own personal interpretation of this song, it hit really close to me, really close to home for me, because I think it's a more mature version of like what I used to listen to in the day, like I said earlier in the video. Slipknot, Cold Chamber, a lot of these metal and goth bands back in the early 2000s that are kind of cringe to me now, but I'll still listen to them when I'm fucking like jamming and working out at the gym. But Back to Black, it stuck with me throughout all these years, and it's become like a classic that I listen to. Like just when I'm, in the mood for something that feels more adult, for lack of a better term. And because it has that 1960s old soul vibe to it, it really it just gets better with age, for lack of a better term. I know I've said that phrase like twice, for lack of a better term, but it does. It gets better with age. And she was only 23 when she made this album. Back in, I think it was 2005 to 2006 were the recording sessions. And but anyways, aside from all that, back to the songs themselves. I already talked about Rehab. Disregard my cat. Me and Mr. Jones came out. Fuck. I heard that song and I remember thinking, I thought it was like some lost song from the 60s when I first heard that, because I didn't know about Amy Winehouse really back in '07. Like I only knew the Rehab song. I didn't know anything else. So when I heard that song out of nowhere one day on the radio, I thought it was like some retro song, and it turned out to be that it wasn't. It was on that album, and that's really what made me explore that album in more depth. And it made me realize that this album is going to be studied for generations, for decades, because no one has that voice like Amy Winehouse. Sure, like, Postmodern Jukebox, they do it, but they were not as good as Amy Winehouse, man. They weren't. Like, no one had heard a voice like that in decades when she came out. Yeah, Frank came out in 2003, and I'm going a little bit off topic here. But in the U.S., no one really knew that album too well. What really put her in like huge mainstream status was the Back to Black album, and with her voice sounding the way it did, that's really what catapulted her into superstardom. So going on to that, I just wanted to mention a couple more songs here just to wrap this up. But Tears Dry on Their Own, the jingle is from Ain't No Mountain High Enough by Marvin Gaye. Not a lot of people, I don't think, know that, but that came from the jingle of, she just kind of just borrowed the jingle and put her own lyrics in it. And you can hear the difference if you play Marvin Gaye's Ain't No Mountain High Enough and Tears Dry on Their Own by Amy Winehouse. You can hear the similarities. But yeah, that really what puts that 60s vibe into it that I fucking love. I fucking love it, man. And one more song that I want to mention that I could not go in this review before I give my star review, my 1 out of 5 star review. Valerie. There's many different versions of this song because I think there was a version that came out in Lioness Hidden Treasures, and there was I think another version that she had recorded during the Frank sessions, I think. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But there are different versions of this song that she recorded. I personally like the Lioness version because it's more of a live version of it. But I digress. You can really hear that the Shirelles. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. The leader of the pack. You can really hear that in Valerie. And you can look it up. You can see her live performing this song, and it was... Damn, she really nailed that song, man. She really did. But to wrap this up, out of all, because this was her final studio album before she unfortunately passed away in 2011, my own personal favorite from this album has got to be, I would say, Back to Black. Back to Black, because it has, like, the music video that encompasses Back to Black really hits you to the core, and it's like a time machine back to the 60s. And the fact that it's in black and white too really hits it more. And it sounds really like, if you look at the lyrics, it's really raw. The lyrics are very raw. And they really show you that she was going through some shit when she wrote that and composed it with Mark Ronson. But also, now to wrap it up, from 0 to 5 stars, I would give this album 5 stars. Completely, hands down. My favorite album of all time, and I can honestly and confidently say that. Best album of all time in my own personal collection is Back to Black by Amy Winehouse from 2007. Pretty sure it came out 2007, not 2006, 2007. But yeah, that's my review of Back to Black's Amy Winehouse, and I hope you appreciate it and you like it. Peace out. Braulio's out.